Well, hello there. It's another day. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. Good morning. Happy, it's Monday, is
It's
it
a
not?
new week. Absolutely.
Wow, brand new week, and
know-
there's lots and lots to talk about, too.
A new week, same old stories, though. No one's talking about, I've watched the different news programs over the weekend, and nobody's talking about the fact that we're on a razor's edge with World War III. You're saying, what? Poland has moved troops to the Belarus border.
Yes.
And there's talk that Poland wants land that Belarus has, and there may be a conflict. If there's a shooting conflict between Poland and Belarus, Russia has already said they're standing with they call it union allies. I guess when you're with the Soviet Union, but
Right.
even though they're not the Soviet Union anymore, Vladimir Putin likes to use the word union. And so if there's a shooting war between Poland and Belarus, you can expect the Russians to get involved too. And if, of course, that happens, you got all of NATO that has to be involved because they have a pact where one goes, all goes. And that's going to be the beginning of World War III. And it's going to be us involved in that fiasco too. This is what, by the way, Joe Biden has maneuvered us into. We're in a situation now where we have a shooting war going on, and we are moments away from getting involved ourselves. And it's sad, and nobody's talking about it. Over the weekend, I heard about Kamala Harris and how she went down to Florida and how she was telling everybody that Ron DeSantis is a racist. I mean, this is
That was a hack job.
It was. And like, come on. You play the race card over and over again. It's like the kid who cries wolf. Enough, Carmela.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because they're changing, critical race theory teaching in school back to just traditional teaching of history, which is what they should do. Even to mainstream black professors that are saying, yeah, we can't ignore, what happened with slavery, but let's be honest here, the people that were slaves, they learned skills that they took and turned around to the betterment of themselves, their families for generation after generation after generation. Mm-hmm. So they took, it's like, okay, we'll take our lemon in life and make a big pitcher of lemonade, which is what they did. They took the bad and turned it into good. And so, yes, it was a bad thing, but good became from it. Otherwise, Kamala wouldn't have had the opportunity to go and do what the hell she did over the weekend.
Well, Carmela, by the way, just a point of interest, I think one of her parents is from India, and the other
she's not black. Yeah,
the other is from overseas. I may have that wrong. Oh, the other I think is Jamaican or something like that. But I don't think her family has a lineage that goes back to American slavery. Do you know what I'm saying?
Not at all. But
she wears that cloak conveniently when she wants to, doesn't she? She puts that jacket on. She goes out there, and all of a sudden they start doing the false accent, which she gets right into. It just drives me nuts. They demean the the minority. They demean them, the intelligence of these people. Black people are equals in every way, and their intelligence is of the same level as any other race in this country. And to think that you can talk down to them like that is an insult. You're insulting a large segment, the segment that you're trying to encourage to be on your side.
Howard Cosell once got himself in a trap. He talked about.
I know. I remember that stupid story.
The black athletes that excel because whatever. But I will say, there are black people that are of wealth or in power that got there because they had to overcome obstacles and they had to learn better, do more, and they made themselves apparently more successful.
Bill,
whether it was,
there've been guys who have made medicines, great doctors. There are people who have invented things that we use every single day right now who come from the black minority community.
Right.
You know,
and what I'm saying, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I'm just saying, I just find it amazing that she goes down there and she insults their intelligence.
Yeah. You know, from adversity comes conquest and great things. And I'm just saying, it is unfortunate what happened with slavery. But there were people that were impoverished, were enslaved, and they turned it around.
Yeah.
And, you know, that is the human plight, you know, where you can sit there, you know, you pull up your boots, you know, and you march forward and you make a positive thing happen. And so to those, I celebrate.
Yeah.
So don't sit there and try to pull.
No one is saying that the black community didn't have an unfair start in our country. They had a terribly unfair start. Everybody knows that. It wasn't fair.
Don't let someone like Carmela pull you back down into a deep hole, the abyss that you fought so hard to get yourself out of and excel from.
Yes.
Shame on you, Carmela.
You are,
and Democrats for doing that.
You are in a wonderful place right now. You know, you've never been in a better place in the history of our country. Don't let them think that you're being denied anything. You're not. You're not. Mm-hmm. If anything, the people who are denying you stuff are the people who are telling you can't do it because you're being picked on.
Now, with that said, Carmela could be our next president in as little as a few days, maybe a few hours, because there is word that Joe Biden, if he were to be impeached, you know, he would step down before it ever happened. If they thought it was coming or anything bad was coming, he would step down because of medical reasons. Well, that leaves us Carmela. Now, they could yank her out, but then you would be putting a Republican into the seat. They're not going to do that. So, Carmela, we could be doing a whole new Hail to the Chief. Oh, hell, Kamala. Oh, no.
But, you know, the thing is, don't think she's not somebody who couldn't be impeached herself, because she has been walking arm in arm with this criminal for the last 2.5 years. So there's
what
something
she should have done. What she should have done is shut up for the past 2.5 years, because every time she opens her mouth, it's like it's like a crapshoot with a bunch of dice coming out, marbles coming out of her mouth. It's a word salad, like they say. Who knows what the hell she's talking about? She doesn't even know sometimes. You
know, Jonathan Turley was on, I believe, Shannon Bream's show on Fox on Sunday, and they were talking about the case, the Biden case, and all the evidence that they have. And Turley said something interesting. Listen.
23 form that Senator Grassley released. The FBI was not happy about that. They said that it actually could create danger and safety issues for the human informant, the confidential source that came forward. It alleges a number of conversations with Burisma executives out of Ukraine saying allegedly that they were forced to pay the Bidens a certain amount of money for help with various issues. These are unverified allegations, but we have seen people in Washington, the Steele dossier comes to mind, run with unverified allegations, and that launching a number of investigations. So this 1023 form, former Attorney General Barr told me on the show a few weeks ago that it was sent to Delaware to the Weiss investigation that was already open. So I asked this latest whistleblower, Joseph Ziegler, if he ever saw that form as part of his investigation as the IRS agent on this case. Here's what he told me.
I had never seen that document before. So I had never seen that 1023. And the reason why that 1023 might have been important is that can further validate some other evidence that we are trying to prove in the case. And that's why all information is necessary for especially the lead IRS case agent to have.
Jonathan, can you assess why that didn't land in his desk during this investigation that took 5 years?
No, they also testified that they were denied the ability to be debriefed on what was coming out of the FBI on this issue. And Bill Barr said that he sent this issue originally to Pittsburgh, and the U.S. Attorney's Office, rather than the FBI, found additional information that the FBI did not. And then they sent it to Delaware. And it's increasingly seems like the FBI is the place where evidence goes to die. I mean, you send evidence to the FBI, if it has the name Biden on it, it dies a very rapid death. And so we have no idea why this was not shared. The key about that 1023 is that it mirrors perfectly what the House committees have found. It describes how the Bidens preferred to use a labyrinth of accounts and banks to hide payments, that no payments would go to what it refers to as the big guy, a term we've seen on the laptop, and that this was all an effort to conceal these transactions. That's exactly what the committees have found in looking at the transactions from these banks. So there's no reason why this would be withheld, because it confirmed independent information that they had access to.
It's interesting. He said the FBI is the place that evidence goes to die. You know, it goes to die. They are covering for this guy.
Yeah. You know, and that kind of leads me to something I was going to talk about later, but are the Democrats, are all the distractions and everything that's going on giving them all the time that they need to cover up Hunter, Joe, and the rest of the crew, you know, so that they get away with things? Because let's face it, the Republicans have got a limited amount of time. They had 2 years from when they got in and took the House to where they are right now. So what do you got? A year and a half left?
Yeah,
Maybe?
but we have a Republican leadership that won't
engage
to impeachment. For example, I have a piece here. It's a little long, but it's worth listening to. It's on the Shannon Bream. Was it Shannon show, I believe? Anyway, one of the maybe it was Maria Bartiromo's show, where she's talking to Jim Jordan. And Jim Jordan, of course, one of the leaders. And, you know, he doesn't wear a coat. He always has his sleeves rolled up. And he talks a great talk. And I have been sold on this guy for a long time, except nothing is happening with. They talk a great talk.
Yeah, but if you don't walk the walk, what the hell good are you?
That's
you talk
exactly.
The talk, but don't walk the walk, then you know what? Walk yourself and talk yourself right out the door.
Well, listen to this. This is a guy who won't commit to impeachment.
Explosive hearings this week. Can you take a step back? What was most important in terms of what you've learned from these whistleblowers and this testimony?
Well, yeah, I do think if you step back, there's sort of three fundamental questions here, Maria. The first one is, what were the Bidens doing to get the money? I mean, 20 different shell companies, 9 different Bidens getting paid. What was the service? What was the product? What was the value they had? The only logical explanation here is it was access to then Vice President Biden, maybe even before that, Senator Biden. The second key question is, was he really involved? Was it this Hunter Biden's operation, or was Joe Biden involved? It sure looks now like he was, based on this confidential human source and the information we got in the 1023 form, thanks to Senator Grassley. And now I think we're at the important final stage of this whole thing, which is, who are you going to believe? The 2 whistleblowers whose testimony has been consistent, or the Garland Biden Justice Department, which can't get their story straight? David Weiss has said 3 different things over the last month and a half about how he handled this investigation, what authority he had. The whistleblowers have been true, consistent, and their testimony has not wavered. So I think now that's the important phase. And frankly, that's the phase, that's the part that the Judiciary Committee is really going to examine, because David Weiss, Maria, said on June 7th in a letter to me, he said, I have full authority to determine where, when, and whether to file charges. And then 23 days later, he wrote me another letter. He said, I stand by what I wrote, but to clarify, but I want to add to it, he said, I actually don't have full authority. My authority is limited to his U.S. Attorney's District. Well, which is it? You can't have full authority and then say you're limited. Yeah. And then just a few weeks later, he wrote Senator Graham and changed his story yet again. And I think that is the key, and that's what we're going to be looking into.
Well, what does AG Merrick Garland have to say about all of this? Did Merrick Garland perjure himself by telling you he didn't get involved here?
Great question, because what's so interesting was when I first wrote the Attorney General clear back in February asking about the special counsel, whether there should be a special counsel for the Hunter Biden investigation, he doesn't write me back. He doesn't answer. And they always give you a response. He doesn't answer. I write him again, the Attorney General. Again, he doesn't respond, but guess who does? David Weiss, the U.S. Attorney in Delaware, who's supposedly handling this case. That in and of itself is unusual. So the Attorney General has been pretty quiet other than what he testified to, which is David Weiss has full authority, but now David Weiss tells us he doesn't. And more importantly, Gary Shapley and Ziegler both told us that all through this investigation, the investigators and the prosecutors were on the same page. And then something happens near the end of 2022, October of 2022, it all changes. And that's this now famous meeting where David Weiss tells Mr. Shapley and others of the investigative team, he says, I don't have full authority. I asked for special counsel status. Main Justice wouldn't give it to me. That is the key distinction. He asked for it, he was denied, is what Mr. Shapley says. Mr. Garland says, no, he had full authority. He could have had special counsel if that's what he really wanted. Those are the two different stories. We got to find out who's telling the truth. My gut tells me it's the two whistleblowers.
Well, all of this leads to many people in the House saying that it is time to draw up impeachment articles. Are you moving to impeach Attorney General Merrick Garland?
This is a question for the full conference, but I will tell you this. The Speaker has been very clear. Speaker McCarthy said, if we have to go to an impeachment inquiry, we will in fact do that. It sure looks now, based on all this evidence that keeps piling up, based on what Senator Grassley released this week with the 1023 form, what we heard from the whistleblowers this past week, and the conflicting statements from the Justice Department, it sure looks like we're moving in that direction at a pretty quick pace. But ultimately, Maria, that's a question for the full conference, Republican conference in the House of Representatives. We will do what the Constitution requires if that's where we need to go, but we have to figure that all out. One thing I do know is if you head down this road, it completely consumes Congress. I was, as you know, I was on the other side of this when Democrats did their ridiculous impeachment of President Trump 4 years ago, and the amount of time and focus it just demands from the Congress is huge. But if that's where we need to go, because that's what the facts say, and that's what our constitutional duty is, then we will, of course, move in that direction.
And throughout that time, during the impeachment proceedings for President Trump, the FBI had the Hunter Biden laptop. They knew about the money that the Biden family had taken in. So, I mean, there's a broader question of how you reform the FBI. But
Right.
before I get to that, Federalist article this morning, revelations about Biden's $10 million Ukraine bribery scheme warrant impeachment. Let's talk about the big guy. What are you going to do about it?
Well, that may be the question too. It may not be about the Attorney General so much, although I think there's important things there. It could be more about the president himself. Again, that's why Chairman Comer is going to continue to pursue his investigation. He's looking to get Hunter Biden's business partner, Devin Archer, in for a transcribed interview, in for a deposition where we can have it under oath, get that all in the record. He's been trying to get that done. There's been a number of times it's been rescheduled. Hopefully that happens soon and we'll get that information. And then, of course, we'll see where we go from there.
So you will bring Attorney General Merrick Garland in for questioning, is what you're saying. What about an impeachment trial? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, he is scheduled to come in front of the Judiciary Committee for the annual, every year the Attorney General comes in front of the Judiciary Committee. That'll be in September. So that is scheduled already. As we get closer, there's going to be lots of questions we have about this particular subject for the Attorney General when he's in front of us in 2 months.
I mean, people are calling this influence peddling. The fact that, James Comer has told us he has already identified $17 million that the Biden family has taken in. Yep. He told me it's upwards of $30 million. Andy Biggs on the committee said it could go as high as $100 million. We have no idea how much money the Biden family has taken in. But what about that in and of itself? Putting the weaponization and the interference of the Justice Department in there. What about the actual money that he's taken in? Have you identified decisions that he made as vice president that could justify him getting paid for them?
Well, of course, the big one that always comes to mind is what happened in Ukraine when he got the prosecutor, Mr. Shokin, fired. I mean, that's always the big one. The irony here is that is the very kind of situation that they turned on President Trump 4 years ago. And in fact, it looks like they're the ones who were involved in some shady dealings when it came to the country of Ukraine. It's always the way it seems the Democrats operate. They try to accuse you of what they're in fact involved in. Right. That's exactly what it seems to me they did to President Trump. So I know the other day, John Solomon column and talked about how we need to go back and look at all the things that took place in 2019 during the impeachment inquiry. We're doing that. We're going back and looking at all those key facts because I think those are coming back to light now. So yeah, we will look at all that information.
Okay, and real quick, in terms of the reform of the FBI, your colleagues have talked about moving it out of Washington. Is that what you want to do, move headquarters out of Washington?
Yeah. Well, we certainly don't want to build a new headquarters in the Washington, D.C. area. We're looking at going to Huntsville, Alabama, because that's already their second headquarters. 20 of their 30 divisions are there. Okay. So we're looking at that. We think that could be helpful.
That's a superficial move. I'm going to tell you something. That is nonsense because we live in a world where you can Zoom somebody and be as close as you want to be whenever you want to. So whether they move the headquarters down the street or down to Alabama, that's just to make them look like they're doing something. In the meantime, if you listen to what he said there, when it comes to impeachment of Biden with all of these criminal activities that he's been accused of doing and all this evidence mounting against him, he won't commit to actually doing it. Well, it kind of sucks out all the oxygen and it takes up a lot of time. Hey, listen, the Democrats impeached Trump twice and they did it in about 15 minutes. Okay? So get off your butt down there and do something because like Bill said a little while ago, when you took over Congress, you had 2 years and the clock is ticking and we're down to about maybe a year and a third. It may only be symbolic, but it means something. So do something.
Yeah, because the time is running out. And I'll tell you what, the Democrats are up to something. Don't think for a second they're not. They are up to something. We just mentioned earlier in the show that it's very possible you're going to have a new president this week. Now, I'm not saying that's an absolute, but all the indicators are there. And all the indicators are there. They want to cover up the Hunter mess. They want to cover up the Joe Biden mess, the Biden family, because there are more people involved. And there's a good chance that the most of them are Democrats. I'm not saying there aren't Republicans in that mix too, but I'm just saying, don't believe the lies that are there before your eyes. There's an old there's an old addict that or edict that says, anything that a Democrat says, expect the exact opposite. Now, kind of a case in point is over the weekend, there was, a story that was floating around, maybe not from the most reliable news source, but the simple fact is it's that Jack Smith has been urged to detain Trump. What does that mean? Lock him up. That's what it means. They want to lock Trump up pending the trial based on, new evidence that's out there. Oh, they got another phone recording. The last one we know is a piece of crap, and they're taking and twisting. So here they are twisting again. And why do they want to lock him up before the trial? Well, to prevent any perceived violence that could happen. They want to prevent it. Okay, let me ask you a question. If that's true and they wanted to lock Trump up and they went and, at noon today, you saw a news story of them locking up Trump to hold him until trial, like a January 6th, where they lock him up, throw away the key. Well, you got to wait for your trial. And they do that to Trump. Do you think there wouldn't be civil unrest and violence?
Of course it would be. Yeah, absolutely.
That move would be then to, in effect, cause the exact thing they're trying to prevent.
But it's not. I believe they want violence. I believe...
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I don't mean everybody on the other side, but I believe there's an element of the other side that figures if they can have civil unrest, they can do things like initiate martial law, delay elections, postpone them, or cancel them altogether.
Reset the stage, reset the clock, change everything, because here's
the story that you were talking about. During an appearance on Dean Obadiah's Sirius XM show.
I have no idea who he is.
I have no idea either.
Okay.
A former federal prosecutor laid out, and I love how they write these stories, laid out a compelling case to take Donald Trump into custody and hold him until his case comes to trial. According to legal expert Greg Kirshner, who I've never heard of. Have you ever heard of Greg Kirshner?
No, I have not.
But he's a legal expert. There's a solid history of locking up defendants when they are considered a threat to the community, and that Trump's latest hints about fomenting violence constitute a reasonable reason for special counsel Jack Smith to take him out of public circulation. This article is written by a hack, okay? I'm not going to read the rest of it because it irritates me, and I am too old to allow my blood pressure to go up. But suffice it to say that what Bill said is true. There is an element. The seed has been planted somewhere. And don't think for 1 second other groups aren't going to start talking about it in the not too distant future, especially as they get closer to doing something against Biden. If it looks like they're going to impeach Biden, they're going to talk more and more about arresting Trump. They don't want you to pay attention to the real story, the real criminal, the real truth. They want you to believe that Trump is the bad guy and Trump is the guy you should be afraid of. It is absolutely sickening to see what's happening in our country right now. Anyway, I could go on and on. I have a piece here. Rudy Giuliani was on Steve Bannon's show on Friday evening, and they talked about the case that they have against Biden. I don't know whether you're aware of this or not, but Rudy Giuliani, before he was the mayor of New York, before he was the aide to President Trump, he was a federal prosecutor, and he ran a lot of big strike forces that went after, like, the mafia, the five families in New York.
Didn't we talk about that on the weekend show? We mentioned that. Maybe we didn't. I had the story.
We might have done it off the air, but here's what Rudy said. Listen.
Rudy Giuliani, Mayor, thank you for taking time away on a Friday to join us. I got a bunch of stuff to go through, so I want to kind of get through it rapidly. The first is the New York Post, our beloved New York Post, huge story today on the whole Burisma thing, the Grassley memo. The situation is that you just hear the pressure on the lawfare side all day long on cable news. You know, Trump's going to get 95 more indictments. Just give us your assessment, particularly since you were the first one to bring the American people this entire situation in the Ukraine. And now Grassley put the memo out. Of course, the mainstream media is saying unverified. The New York Post is not saying that, and we're not saying that. Unverified. Your thoughts, sir?
This is probably the most verified informant information I've ever seen. It's been verified by about 3 years of disclosures, including actual testimony that people have seen or can see that's been tape recorded. I mean, Shokin has testified, the guy who was fired, the guy who actually fixed the case, Lysenko, has testified. I mean, there's direct testimony. Biden confessed to it when he was in front of the Atlantic Council. The hard drive contains at least 5 texts that would be used as admissions in the trial. Best one being that Hunter texts his daughter straight out, I've had to give half my income for the last 30 years to Pop. They say, well, there's no evidence that money went to Pop. Yeah? How about his son says he gave it to him? Right? I've never had better evidence than that, Steve. This is like Alice in Wonderland.
Rudy, you took down everybody saw the movie Godfather when they're sitting around the table with the 5 families. The movie, I think the timing is in the late 40s or early 50s before the move to Vegas. But you actually, as a prosecutor, you took down the 5 families. Do you have as much information? Do you have as much evidence to take down the Biden crime family as you had to take down the 5 families of the New York Mafia, sir?
I mean, without exaggeration, Steve, this would be the strongest case I've ever seen. I've never seen a stronger case. There are literally 5 or 6 direct witnesses who actually can tell you the crime. And I'm adding, I don't count on my Kolozlowski to testify, the guy who gave the information. Because he's an organized criminal and he's suspected of murder. But if he testified, now you have 7 witnesses, and you have bank records. You have a money laundering transaction of $3 million that goes to the Bidens. That's just on paper. You don't need a witness for it. I honestly have never seen more evidence than that. And to say that this is not verified is just a lie, horribly. Also, the Daily Mail today reported that the FBI had actually internally corroborated this. They don't like to say it, but they were led to this because of the information that Costello and I gave them.
This is a guy who was the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York from 1983 to 1989. He took down the 5 mafia families and did an incredible job. He's not a jerk. You know, they try to make him out to be almost a mindless sycophant of Trump's. He's not. Rudy Giuliani is a terrific lawyer, a smart man, and he knows what he's talking about. Never mind what the media and the press is trying to make you believe, okay?
They've done a good job trying to make him a feeble idiot that's a criminal, and him and Trump, and they were profiting from buying. It was ridiculous. The stories, if you would step back and just look at the story at its substance level, you would realize that it was a pile of manure.
Oh, I know.
They were just slinging at him.
But they just, that never stops the left from throwing it anyway. You know, the fact that it's a blatant lie, that none of their charges hold any substance, have any meat on them, they just throw it out anyway, just keep shoveling it out because it's not the quality of the accusation, it's the quantity of the accusation. But we should take a moment, if we can, for just a second to pause and talk about the possibility of you advertising on our program. We've decided to consider some advertising sponsorship partnerships, and I think it would be something that a smart advertiser might consider, not terribly expensive. Our reach is amazing. If you are looking for some kind of a national or international reach, we have people listening all around the country, thousands of people in all the states, and we have, of course, now people listening in Germany, France, Russia. I mean, you name the continent, there's somebody on that continent is listening to this program, which I find amazing. It's just mind-boggling. This is a guy who got into radio on a 500-watt radio station in a small town in Rhode Island that reached about 12 people, and to think that you can now do what we're doing and reach so many so quickly, it's amazing, mind-boggling.
You know, it doesn't matter your reach. The fact is, effective advertising works, and we're a good conduit. I mean, we look at numbers, raw numbers, and they're pretty significant. But we only look at it from one source, and that's the parent source where we reside on Podbean. Yeah, it's anotherday.com, the web domain, but it's still done on a host company. But then places like iHeart, Spotify, iTunes, you name it, over 25 different streaming sites also carry the show. And so we sometimes get stuff from people that we have no idea who they are. And even, you know, we always throw the email out there. The interesting thing is the people that take advantage of the email are the politicians and whatnot to send out their news releases. Is like, hey, thanks, guys, but we already had that. But, you know, so
it's a terrific opportunity for a smart advertiser to become a partner with our program. We're not untried and unproven. We've been doing this now for close to 2 years, and we've gone from literally nothing to a pretty amazing audience.
Yeah, and by the way, officially, this is episode number 400, if I got my count right. It's more than that, because we don't put a number on the weekend shows. So when we do a weekend show, it's just there. It's like down in Louisiana, they have a word called lagniappe, which means a little something extra. So the weekends are lagniappe. But the simple fact is, we're 400 episodes, and tomorrow that goes on the plus side, which means that we're here. We're here, we're serious, and we're here to stay. So we figured it's time, because we go, wow, we've got all these listeners. Why don't we have advertising? Well, that's a good question.
Well, I think we come from a broadcasting background, both of us. we worked on some.
We're not salesmen.
Well, no, that's true too.
We're not salespeople.
Well, that's true too. But the fact of the matter is, we also didn't figure that we had a product that was big enough at the time to sell. But now, because of our background, we see it's an incredible audience. It has grown exponentially at a rapid rate. And can we turn around and tell you how many people every day are listening? Not really. We can give you a thumbnail sketch, but we can't give you, because there are so many different platforms and so many different ways to measure podcasts. But what we can tell you is, based upon our response to the program, we have a massive audience out there. We run a promo at the end of our shows, which is from Amazon, essentially. And Amazon says we have 200 million people plus listening to the program. Now, I don't know where they get that figure from, but I think they got it from a French statistical company in Paris. And I think it could use some scrutiny myself, but the fact that if we reach 2 million people would be amazing. I mean, we have got a much bigger audience than I think even we realize. And, and again, this is not going to be an expensive proposition for an advertiser. It's not going to break your back, but it's going to be an opportunity for you to promote your product to thousands of people around the country at an affordable rate, and also to partnership with us and maybe make a statement for your business,
Well, you know what? I'll say this, too. There might be some salesperson out there that has a good Rolodex and, sees it as an opportunity. Well, it could be an opportunity. So let's do this. Let's throw out the phone number, and then I'll give the email. And
well, the other thing we should point out is how we promote your business is up for discussion. We may have you on as a guest and talk about it for a segment. We may have your commercials be direct reads from you. So something to consider. Our phone number here, in case you want to talk to us, just ask for Jim or Bill. And again, if you call the phone number, you're going to get a machine. You're not going to get somebody right away calling you back, but be patient, please. We're a small crew here. Our number is 833-538-7868, 833-538-7868.
And there's mail at itsanotherday.com, mail at itsanotherday.com. So contact us, and we will get back to you. We might be a little slow because, like Jim said, we're a small crew here. As a matter of fact, the last time I counted, I'm looking at the stat. There's two of us.
That's true. I didn't say how many. I said we're small. I didn't lie. The thing is, too, we are enthusiastic about what we do, and I think you'll find that our enthusiasm spreads into your commercials, too. Also, to the people out there who are listening who don't like commercials, let me just explain a little something, a little reality. Commercials help us stay here. There are expenses that we have to pay out of our pocket on a regular basis. And like Bill said, we're just two guys. And initially you do it because you want to build a program and, get a product together. Well, we've got that product together now. And it's not that we want to become rich, because we'll never become rich doing this program, but it will help us sustain ourselves. It will help keep the program going. It'll make it easier for Bill and I to do the program. It doesn't mean that if we don't get sponsors, we're going to quit. We didn't say that, but it gets harder, So if you are...
Well, you know what, though? Testament to us, and then we probably ought to move on. Simple fact is, we've done this for over a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And, with that said, and we've done it without compensation, and the shows have gotten better and better and better. No, I'm not trying to brag, but what we have done as two fellow broadcasters that came from a different realm of broadcasting, we've honed our skills, and we bounce pretty well off of each other. We both sit there and we go... We, in our own respective time, gather up stories, and then Jim does a great job of getting audio, because we can only, you can't have it coming from two different ends, so it comes from his end. And a lot of times we we work off of that. What I'm saying is you're getting a well-polished, fine-tuned media machine, and that's just what I'm going to say on that.
And the thing is, to our credit, we both have, even though we did come from a different type of broadcasting. I'll be honest with you, I was a disc jockey for years. I played the records, and Bill was too. But I also did talk radio, and I also helped program and manage talk radio programs. And you did the same thing. You helped put together one of the finest talk programs in the Northeast, maybe the country.
Well, it was on XM for a while. It was on XM for a while, and one of the hosts still subs for Sean Hannity and was on Fox, and and I worked with another person that was a disc jockey that is well known now. So it's not like the political strings haven't been.
We've worked in that area before.
Entwined with me,
yeah. And I think and I do find it interesting how, like you said, we have gotten used to our rhythm. We know when to compliment each other's I pause and you pick it up, like you do the same thing. These are things you have to. It's like dancing. It's like if you're dancing with a new partner and they have to learn how you move, who leads, who follows. This is kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
So enough of that. We've talked about this long enough, and we've done you have one more thing to say, I can tell.
No, I was gonna point out a story that I just saw. I haven't opened it up, but it was sitting there going, yeah, how many people live in the United States? What, 365 million, something like that?
Yeah.
All right.
Close.
So now, and this is on the Gateway Pundit, actually, but the headline reads that now, according to the count, the total number of illegal aliens who entered the U.S. under Joe Biden is now more than the population of how many states would that be?
Oh, I have
1, 2, 3,
Bill?
50, or 35? 35! Ding, 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 ding. That's the answer.
35 states. Yep. Total number of illegal aliens who entered the U.S. under the Biden administration. 35.
So you know what they're doing? They're canceling out the conservative Republican vote. That's what they're trying to do.
And do you know
or at least give cause for it.
And do you know what they're doing now, the illegals? I saw this over the weekend, too. They're starting to protest. They're not getting enough from us for free. They want jobs, they want housing, and they want subsidies from us. So help me God, I saw them. They're holding up signs, we want jobs now. These are illegals marching in our cities. I hope they continue to do this when Trump is president. It will make it easier for him to find them.
Yeah, did we advertise for them to come here so that they expect those rights? Because
Joe Biden kind of did. Remember during the
I know he did.
The debate, he said he was going to open the borders up.
Well, he did even when he's told not to do something, he does it. He has done so many illegal things, so maybe he should step down. But then, can you imagine the train wreck that we're stepping out of to the train wreck we're going to step into if Kamala becomes president this week?
I don't know how. I don't know how we will be able to. I don't know how we'll make it with Kamala.
Well, I hear Democrats all over the place. Our democracy. Let me tell you something. Your party threw away democracy and the republic when it took office the last time, which, by the way, I firmly believe you stole. You didn't win it.
You got to remember what President Trump said about this president we have right now.
We have a compromised president. China gives him millions of dollars. If he's given Biden millions of dollars, he's compromised. Now, that's only the stuff they found. There's a lot of other things, and there'll be some things that you never find, but there's a lot of other things. So he's getting millions of dollars illegally from China, and then you say, hey, they impeached me over a phone call that was perfect. Why aren't they impeaching Biden for receiving tens of millions of dollars? Why isn't he under impeachment?
I mean, that's such a logical. Why isn't he being impeached, Republicans? Where are you? Don't talk about what you're going to do. Do something. By the way, it was just announced.
Sand is where they are.
It was just announced that Trump is going to be doing, I guess, a rally in Erie this coming weekend in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is going to be interesting. Kind of solidify his position in PA. But I don't think, if he thinks that he can win, if he thinks that he can overwhelm the election results and win that way, I think President Trump is making a grave and fatal mistake, because I think they're going to steal it. No matter what they need, they will get it in the long run. They'll just pause the counting at 1 o'clock in the morning, and they'll resume it again the next morning. In the meantime, they'll ship in boxes of phony ballots like they did in Philadelphia during the last election in 2020, and nobody will complain. As a matter of fact, if you talk about it, you'll be called an election denier. You know,
that's what they do all the time. And there's all these little weird little Democrat live shows showing up on all the social media over the weekend. And they talk about, this is the best president possibly in history, with the best economy possibly in history. I mean, look at his rallies. I mean, they're flooded with people. I'm going, who the hell are you trying to fool?
I know. He has about 12 people, and then mostly his staff.
Well, see, that guy, has never been to a rally. And most of the people listening have never been to a rally, so they just take his word for it. Yeah, I'm a Democrat. Yeah. Well, I wish prices would be cheaper, and that's what I heard a comment on. Well, I wish prices were cheaper and things were a little better, but yeah, you're right. It is the best. See, they're being led along like sheep, and that's what the Democrats are doing. They're telling you lies. Until you get off your ass and go out and see for yourself and look up the stories for yourself, you might drop your jaw and be a little shocked at what lies your party has told you. Not that the Republicans aren't telling any lies either. It's a lying bunch of fools, and, it's all snakes in D.C.
Well, I'll tell you, we're living in interesting times, as they would say. Snakes in D.C., for darn sure. But you know what gets me? We have all this turmoil, all this upheaval going on, and the Republicans, they'll talk and they'll confuse, but nothing gets done. And the clock keeps ticking. Case in point, I like John Kennedy. He's a senator from Louisiana. He's always got a colloquialism or a funny joke that makes me laugh, and he's got an interest. I think he's an Oxford scholar, a Rhodes Scholar. I think he's got a terrific CV, as they would say, resume. And but yet he gets out this past Friday, I guess, and he's talking to his fellow senators about an amendment that he's trying to put forward, where they will how did he put it? They will condemn the disgusting racism that has been aimed at Justice Clarence Thomas. And they spent, and I'm going to play 7 minutes and 42 seconds of this, because I want you to hear how long they wasted on an amendment that it wasn't even necessary. But it took up time. It was a waste of space. No, people who like Thomas, and I like Thomas, but we have got a war that is festering over in the Ukraine. We've got China getting ready to attack Taiwan. We've got the North Koreans threatening to throw nukes again. All this stuff is going on.
We've got an entire country that Joe Biden has let into our country.
Absolutely.
That outnumbers the population of 35 states, and that was as of when they printed the story, with more and more people flooding in. At some point in time, we are going to house two separate countries with equal population.
But we spent 7 minutes and 42 seconds talking like this.
Chairman, I would call up Amendment SIL 23885, SIL 23885. This amendment would simply condemn the racist things that have been said about Justice Clarence Thomas.
So to be clear, Senator Byrne, you're talking about simply saying that we condemn racism against any justice, but he will only put one justice in?
That's right.
I don't understand the reluctance to accept the fact that Justice Clarence Thomas, who happens to be a black man, has been the butt of a lot of racist statements. And I don't understand the reluctance to condemn those. And that's what my amendment does. I don't want to water it down. I don't want to bubble wrap it. I don't want to sugarcoat it. I want it to say, big as Dallas, the United States Senate condemns all these racist things that have been said about Justice Clarence Thomas. Now, if somebody wants to offer another amendment to condemn every racist thing that has ever been said in the history of ever, I will vote for it. But this one is about Clarence Thomas. And I'll support going through justice by justice, all of whom have anybody who's ever served on the Supreme Court. But this one, and I think we all ought to go on record, is about Clarence Thomas.
Will Senator Kennedy yield for a question?
Yes, sir.
I'm reading your amendment, which I think is very well drafted. One of the things you cite is on July 13th, just a few days ago, 2023, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison disgustingly likened Justice Thomas to a house slave from the film Django Unchained. Are there any of the other 9 justices who have been subject to such racist attack in the last few days from a sitting Democrat in the state of Minnesota has anyone else been subject to those kind of attacks as frequently, as brazenly, and as unapologetically?
No, sir, and it would be unconscionable for this committee not to condemn that kind of rhetoric for Clarence Thomas.
Chairman,
Senator Whitehouse.
Despite Senator Graham's view of the breadth of this bill and the debate, I consider this to be not relevant to the matter at hand. And further, it specifically requests the Biden administration to inject itself politically into a law enforcement decision that the Biden administration, I think quite properly, has avoided getting involved with. So I urge my colleagues to vote no.
Any further discussion on this amendment? If not,
are you going to offer a second degree then on the?
I have some discussion.
Senator Kennedy, your amendment.
How can you not condemn a statement calling Justice Clarence Thomas a house slave? Come on, folks. That's all this amendment does. I mean, does anybody here support that kind of rhetoric? I don't. I don't think you do. And this kind of rhetoric hasn't been directed toward John Roberts. It hasn't been directed toward Neil Gorsuch. It's been directed toward Clarence Thomas. And it's un-American, it's unconscionable, and I can't believe we wouldn't condemn it. I don't care how many lawyers can dance on the head of a pen. Don't try to pretend that this is some sort of a technical mistake in this amendment. It's not complicated. You don't have to be a senior at Caltech to figure it out. It says all of this stuff about Clarence Thomas, calling him a house slave and other racist, disgusting statements, we condemn. Now, you either condemn it or you don't. And that's all this amendment does.
If I may respond, I, for one, do condemn that sort of rhetoric. But the senator's amendment does more than that. It calls upon the Biden administration to enforce Section 1507 of Title 18 United States Code to protect Supreme Court justices, including Justice Thomas, in light of flagrant violations of the law designed to intimidate justices. And we've spent a lot of time in this committee trying to make sure that the White House and the political side of the executive branch is kept out of internal Department of Justice law enforcement decisions. And in the light of that, I again ask my colleagues to vote no unless there's a second-degree amendment that clears that problem.
Mr. Chairman?
I respect my colleague, Senator Whitehouse, and he's better at me counting the number of lawyers that can dance on the head of a pin. But this is a real simple amendment. If you support the racist things that have been said about Clarence Thomas, then vote against this amendment. If you think the things that have been said about Clarence Thomas are racist to the marrow and you condemn them, then vote for this amendment.
Senator Cruz?
Mr. Chairman, two arguments have been proffered against Senator Kennedy's amendment. The first argument is, well, gosh, maybe there have been racist things said against other justices. I will point out objectively the venom and bigotry directed at Clarence Thomas is qualitatively different from any of the other 8 justices. This resolution gives multiple instances of elected Democrats currently in office launching racial epithets with complete impunity. The second argument given was the argument given by Senator Whitehouse, and he says, well, the part that is offensive of this is it calls on the Department of Justice to enforce the law. Just stop and repeat that to yourself again. So it is now the position of Democrats that it is unacceptable to ask the Department of Justice to enforce the law.
Senator Cruz, would you yield to a question?
Happily.
Would you read one more time for the record that statement about Justice Thomas and who made it?
On July 13th, 2023, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, the currently sitting Attorney General, offensively likened Justice Thomas to a house slave from the film Django Unchained.
So that was 7 minutes and 42 seconds. I wanted you to hear the whole thing, the ridiculously long and I think waste of time talking about this amendment. By the way, even though Sheldon Whitehouse was saying don't vote for it, he urges that everybody vote no. In the end, they all voted unanimously for this amendment. It passed. But here's the thing. It was a waste of time, and I think a lot of this is happening in our government right now. We're ignoring like Bill said, we have the border situation, we have millions of illegals walking through our streets with no background check. We don't know who these people are. And we have Congress talking about essentially an amendment that says we all think that it's wrong to call Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas a bad name. Mm-hmm. I mean, what the heck is that all about? I mean, don't we have better things to do right now? We're in crisis mode, and these guys are playing like a softball.
Well, I don't know if it's a softball. I think in the long term, because they all unanimously voted for it, but they didn't even want to have the vote or do any of this. They wanted to poo-poo it, and basically it did call out certain racists in the Democrat Party that sit there. You can't play both sides of the fence. So 7 minutes was too long. They could have got to the vote and done it. I do applaud, Ted Cruz, because he, he's a brilliant guy, even though he's been put down a lot, and he's been called some racial things too. So,
what's ironic about this thing? The amendment was put forward by the senator from Louisiana, right? Yeah. Louisiana, that's as deep south as you get. And it was fought against by the senator from Rhode Island, who, by the way, if you remember, Sheldon Whitehouse was the senator who was a member of an all-white Yacht Club in Rhode Island. They found this out about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and he first tried to deny it, and then it was actually true. And an all-white, a racially discriminating yacht club he was a member of, and he was fighting against the passage of that amendment. Amazing.
Yeah, well, you know what? Black people, rightfully so, offended by the N-word. But, you have these well-educated white people that sit there and use fancy ways of saying, a house slave. That's all they are. It's a house slave. I never said the N-word.
Yeah.
Well, these are Democrats that are doing it. So, they did just light up their toes with a candle on fire and poured some gas on it. Now, what do they do with that piece of legislation? Because I do remember being in a trial once, not against me, but the simple fact was it was race related, and the attorney, who is these days a good friend of mine, sat there and said, "Once a racist, always a racist.
Mm-hmm.
Once a cheater, always a cheater." The list goes on and on and on. So these guys have been singled out and identified in that. So that's the good out of it. But 7 minutes was too long. That was a cut and dry, simple case. Should have been presented, done, over with, but the guilty didn't want to.
I don't ever remember in my whole life ever using personally that N-word. I've always thought of that as being offensive. And I'm not saying that to brag. It's just the way I was brought up. And I'm talking about back in the 50s and the 60s. It was a word that was it wasn't appropriate even back then by people who respected all human beings. And
kids don't see color differences, but we learn color differences and differences in people, maybe from whether it's a deficiency that they have, the color of their skin, maybe they have some kind of defect. We learn that. And where do we learn that from? Well, the people that brought us into the world, and they pass it on. And that happens actually in all the races. So it is not a white-only thing.
But look at a lot of the rap songs, Bill, throw the N-word around like it's no big deal. They throw it around, and they think that it has no consequence, but it does.
And they speak out against white people in a derogative way.
Yeah.
Because they learned it from somebody too. I'm just saying, it's we, the adults, the people that the young look up to. We need to get our act together.
I think when we die and we go to heaven, and they say, okay, here comes Jim Harrington. There's no box that says Jim Harrington, white, Caucasian. I don't think you'll see that. I think it'll be just, here comes Jim Harrington.
A soul has no color.
Yeah.
A soul has no color.
Yep. So I think we've definitely got to stop. We have to stop the Kamala Harrises from using race as an issue, making a non-issue an issue for political purposes. It's got to stop.
And for a white person in that boat, that would be a Joe Biden. And look who he was friends with, the biggest racist of all. Yeah. So
who picked on Clarence Thomas more than anyone in the Senate ever? Joe Robinette Biden.
Because he is a racist.
Oh, he went after Clarence Thomas viciously. Now, don't think that Joe Biden is some kumbaya liberal. He had to grow into that politically. I don't believe he believes half of what he says, but if it's good for him politically, that's good enough for Joe Biden.
Well, he's made money with it. That's for damn sure, and that's the crime.
Hey, my friend, go ahead. You have something you want to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's time we wind up this clock.
Well, it's funny. We are on the same page. I was just going to say the same thing. We will do it again tomorrow, same time. Also, if you want to reach us, again, our phone number is 833-538-7868, 833-538-7868.
And there's mail at itsanotherday.com, mail at itsanotherday.com. I was looking to see if I could pick up a name from somebody that messaged me last night from California. I'll mention them tomorrow, but I guess there's a website out there that wants to plug the show.
Hey, God bless them. God bless them.
If we do anything California-centric, and I said...
One of the most beautiful states in the country, despite what the left is trying to do to it.
I grew up there. I grew up in the San Joaquin Valley, the gateway to the Sequoias. I know all about it.
I mean, the only good thing about San Francisco's situation right now is that it can be fixed. It can be fixed. If you get some responsible people in government and they start to clean the place up and help out the needy, and there are a lot of people who are on the street who need a lot of help from people who have means. They need rehab, they need a shelter, they need aid and comfort. Those are the kind of things, and a lot of them need special training. So just sticking them on the street and saying you enjoy your tent is not the answer.
No, it's not. And there's a lot more conservatives in California than what the common person might believe. Democrats are a very small circle of people that command in big cities, so it looks like they've got a lot of power and they have a lot of influence, and they do, but they're not the mass population that lives out. It's time for the conservatives, and there can be conservative Democrats too, but all of them to stand up and take back that state from the liberal A-somethings that are in control
ruining it.
Now.
They're ruining a great state. Hey, friends, have a great day. Bill, if you'd like to, I would imagine you've warmed up your voice for our customized closing. You do it so well.
Is that, hang on, let me see. I got to
All right, it's all yours.
It's all mine?
Yep.
Hasta la vista, baby! We're out of here!
The voice of freedom. CRN America. These days, when you want an answer about just about anything, you ask Alexa. You ask her about the weather. You ask her who won your favorite sporting event. You ask her to find a fact that you can't find anywhere. Well, we did that too. We asked her how many people have downloaded it'sanotherday.com. And this is what she said.
From acceleration.com. It has been downloaded as much as 260,433,467 times.
I know. Seems like a lot. Seems like a lot to us, too. But it's Alexa. Thanks for making us a part of your day. And tell your friends about it'sanotherday.com. We could use an extra listener. I mean, what do you do when you only have 260 million?